Holly Costa wiped the sweat from her brow as she leaned against the wall of the small police station in the remote Iraqi village. The heat was oppressive, the kind that seeped into your bones and made your brain feel like it was cooking inside your skull. She had been in country for 6 months now, attached to a joint operation with the Navy SEALs, and every day was a battle against temperatures that regularly exceeded 120 degrees. That as a Navy Chief Petty Officer and Combat Medic Corpsman, her official job was to provide medical care. But her real mission was far more sensitive. Holly spoke 4 languages, including Arabic, which made her invaluable to Special Operations Command. While the male operators handled combat operations and gathered intelligence from the male population, Holly worked the women and children. In this culture, the men could not speak to the women, which created a massive blind spot in intelligence gathering. Holly filled that gap. Mothers came to her with sick children, wives came with complaints about their health, and in the course of these conversations, they talked. They mentioned which houses had received visitors in the night. They whispered about which men had recently returned from training camps across the border. They pointed out the vehicles that didn't belong. It was dangerous work, but Holly loved it. She felt useful. She felt like she was making a difference in a war that had already dragged on for 9 years, with no end in sight. The night before everything changed, her commander called her into his office. His face was grave in the harsh fluorescent light. "Sit down, Chief," he said. Holly sat. "We have intelligence that your cover has been compromised," he told her. "The enemy knows about you. They know you're gathering information from the women. You've become a high-value target." Holly absorbed this information with the practiced calm of someone who had spent 14 years in the military. Inside, her heart hammered against her ribs. Outside, her face remained still. "We're rotating you stateside," the commander continued. "You're done here. Until then, you stay behind the wire. No more patrols, no more village visits. You remain on base where we can protect you. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Holly said. But that night, and lying in her bunk, she couldn't sleep. She thought about the SEALs she worked alongside, the men who went outside the wire every single day. They were targets, too. Every American in this country was a target. What made her any different? What made her more deserving of safety than them? The next morning, April 15th, 2010, Holly made a decision. It was her last mission before flying home. Tomorrow was her 30th birthday. She wanted to go out one more time. She wanted to say goodbye to the women she had come to know, to check on the children she had been treating for parasites and respiratory infections. She suited up and joined the patrol. The village was quiet when they arrived. Too quiet. Holly felt it in her gut, that primal instinct that warns of danger before the conscious mind processes the threat. But she pushed it aside. She had work to do. She was walking near the police station, trying to stay hydrated in the brutal heat. When the world exploded, there was no sound. That was the strangest part. One moment she was walking, the next she was on the ground, thinking she had passed out from heat exhaustion. She tried to push herself up, and that's when she saw it. Blood streaming down her arm. Her own blood. A sniper's bullet had pierced the back of her neck, drilled through her brain, and lodged behind her left eye. The SEALs on her team reacted instantly. They returned fire, laying down a wall of lead to suppress the shooter while 2 operators dragged Holly's limp body behind cover. Someone was screaming for a medic, forgetting that the medic was the one who was hit. Holly Costa, the woman who had saved countless lives over her 14-year career, was now fighting for her own. The bullet had done catastrophic damage. It had torn through brain tissue, shredded neural pathways, and left a trail of destruction in its wake. By all medical logic, she should have died right there in the dirt of that Iraqi village. But Holly was still breathing. Barely. Her heart was still beating. For now. The SEALs radioed for an emergency medical evacuation. Minutes felt like hours as they worked to keep her alive, applying pressure, monitoring her vital signs, willing her to hold on just a little longer. The Black Hawk arrived in a storm of dust and rotor wash, and Holly was loaded aboard, still unconscious, still bleeding, still fighting. And at the military hospital in Baghdad, surgeons worked frantically to save her life, but the damage was too extensive, the swelling in her brain too severe. They couldn't remove the bullet. Not yet. So they did what they could to stabilize her, then put her on a transport to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. From Germany, she was flown to the National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. It was there, in the trauma unit, that she was given a new name: Hope Trauma. When soldiers, sailors, and Marines were evacuated from Iraq or Afghanistan, their real names were not posted on the doors. It was a security measure, a way to protect them and their families from enemy forces who might target them even in the hospital. So patients were given medical names, usually based on their condition or the unit they came from. Holly became Hope. She lay in that bed for a month, suspended between life and death. That while machines breathed for her and doctors monitored the swelling in her brain, her family waited. Her 4-year-old daughter Leah waited. The SEALs she had served with waited. And then, slowly, miraculously, the swelling began to subside. 3 months after she was shot, surgeons finally felt it was safe to operate. They opened her skull and carefully removed the bullet that had taken up residence behind her left eye. The surgery was long and delicate, requiring the kind of precision that came only from years of training and experience. When it was over, the surgeons emerged with good news and bad news. The good news: Holly had survived. The bullet was out. She was going to live. The bad news: the damage to her brain was permanent. She was paralyzed on her right side. She was legally blind. She would likely have speech and language problems for the rest of her life. She would need to learn how to do everything again: walking, talking, or eating, dressing. The simple tasks that most people took for granted would become daily challenges. When Holly finally woke from her coma, she was disoriented and confused. The last thing she remembered was walking in Iraq. Now she was in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines and strangers. Her mother was there, crying. Her father was there, trying to be strong, and then someone told her she was a mother, Leah, her daughter, age 4. Holly had no memory of her, and this was perhaps the cruelest part of the brain injury. Not the paralysis, not the blindness, not the loss of her career. It was the gaping hole where her daughter should have been. Leah had existed. Leah had grown from a baby to a toddler to a preschooler, and Holly remembered none of it. The process of reconnecting with her daughter was slow and painful. Leah was frightened of this woman who looked like her mother but didn't remember her, who spoke strangely, who moved awkwardly. Now Holly was frightened too. Frightened of this tiny person who expected love and care from someone who felt like a stranger to herself. But gradually, day by day, they found their way back to each other. Holly watched videos of Leah as a baby, listened to stories from family members, studied photographs until the images began to feel familiar, and Leah, with the resilience of children, learned to accept her mother as she was now, not as she had been before. After Bethesda, Holly was transferred to a veterans hospital in Tampa, Florida, for rehabilitation. It was there that she met Annie Remsburg, whose son Corey had arrived the year before. Corey was a U.S. Army Ranger who had been severely injured by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan. He had suffered a traumatic brain injury, was blind in his right eye, and partially paralyzed on his left side. Annie was a fierce advocate for her son, a woman whose love had no limits and whose determination was absolute. When she met Holly, she saw another young warrior fighting the same battle. She took Holly under her wing the same way she had taken Corey. "These are very strong men and women," Annie would later say. "They are used to fighting back. Holly came back and proved them wrong." The rehabilitation was grueling. Holly had to learn how to walk again, how to use her left hand to do everything her right hand used to do, how to form words clearly, and how to process language when the words got jumbled in her brain. She had aphasia, a condition that made it difficult to find the right words, to describe things, to communicate the way she once had. "Sometimes I am at a loss for words," she would admit, years later. "It's hard to describe things." But she kept going. She had always been a fighter. That was why she had joined the Navy at 17, fresh out of high school in Port Angeles, Washington. How she had driven down to the recruitment center with dreams of seeing the world, of escaping her small hometown. The Air Force office was closed for lunch. The Marine Corps had no medical unit, so she joined the Navy because it had corpsmen. She had taken community college courses while still in high school, becoming a licensed practical nurse. The Navy gave her the chance to use those skills in ways she could never have imagined. For 14 years, she had served her country, rising to the rank of Chief Petty Officer, earning the respect of everyone who served with her. And now, at 30 years old, her military career was over. After 2 years in Tampa, the Navy retired her. She joined the growing ranks of women veterans, a demographic that was still relatively small but growing fast. In 2015, women made up just over 9% of the veteran population. By 2043, that number was projected to rise to more than 16%. Holly moved back to Washington State, near her hometown of Port Angeles. She settled in Sequim, a small city of about 6,600 people, and tried to build a new life for herself and her daughter. It was hard. The isolation was crushing. She had no family nearby, no social support system, no community of people who understood what she had been through and what she continued to face every day. The drive to the VA hospital in Seattle took 6 hours round trip, and the winters were dark and cold. The paralysis in her right side made even simple tasks difficult. The blindness made her dependent on others for things she used to do without thinking. She fell into depression. Through it all, Annie Remsburg stayed in touch. She called regularly, checking on Holly, listening to her struggles, offering encouragement and advice. And over time, Annie began to notice something in their conversations. Holly was sinking deeper and deeper into darkness. Finally, Annie said what needed to be said. "If you are really unhappy, why don't you move?" Holly's response broke Annie's heart. "I have nowhere to go." Annie didn't hesitate. "Yes, you do, honey. You can move anywhere you want to, and we will help you." Annie and her husband Craig immediately became Holly's advocates. They reached out to nonprofits, filled out applications, made phone calls, and refused to take no for an answer. They found the Carrington Charitable Foundation in California, an organization that had donated more than 20 new and renovated homes to veterans. Holly would be their first woman veteran. She told them she wanted to move to Arizona. She had visited the Remsburgs over the years and loved the warmth, the sunshine, the sense of community. The foundation bought a 1-story home in Gilbert and renovated it to be fully compliant with ADA standards. Wider doorways for her wheelchair, roll-in showers, lever handles instead of knobs. And every detail was designed to make her life easier. In mid-October, Holly and her daughter Leah moved into their new home. Leah was almost 14 now, no longer the frightened little girl who didn't recognize her mother. She was a teenager with her own life, her own friends, her own future. But she still needed her mom, and her mom still needed her. They lived just a mile from the Remsburgs. Annie didn't stop with the house. She connected Holly with social groups, veterans support organizations, and community resources. The VA hospital was in Phoenix, easily accessible. There was a VA clinic right in Gilbert. For the first time since her injury, Holly had access to the care she needed without a 6-hour round trip. She started counseling for her depression. She scheduled speech therapy to help with the aphasia. She began to build a new life in a new place, surrounded by people who cared about her, and she started to think about the future. Despite everything she had lost,